Hello, darling entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here with another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 162. So all of today's show notes and any special links that I mention will be available at tashcorbin.com/162. Today, I'm going to be answering a very, very common question, and that is, do you need a qualification to actually offer services as a coach? Interesting one. Let's get into it. So I want to talk about this need to be qualified, or this need to get a qualification as a business coach through a business strategy lens. So I'm not going to be talking about the legals, and particularly when it comes to things like helping people with their health and well-being, working in spaces such as finances, legals, etc. They're very different areas of business, and it's important that you understand the legal and financial requirements of you running your business. However, there are some services that require a qualification in that space, and I want to focus just down on coaching. So this may be life coaching, some forms of health coaching, business coaching, clarity coaching, strategy coaching, whatever you want to call it. The types of qualifications that I see people holding themselves back from actually stepping into their business because they're waiting for are actually not necessary qualifications that are required. So for example, I do not have a formal coaching qualification. I have trained in coaching before, but I've not gone for a certificate in coaching or a diploma or any of those sorts of things. And when I talk about this with people, a lot of them are really surprised. But it was actually some really great advice that my first business coach gave me. And she said, you have a natural propensity to be in that coaching space. You have a really good natural style when it comes to working with people. And to be 100% honest with you, we probably wouldn't call a lot of the work that you do coaching in its purest form. So why don't you just spend 6 months growing your business first, and then if you decide you want to get that formal qualification out of your profits, then you can do that. And it was such amazing advice, and I'm so glad that we had that conversation, because ultimately I didn't need a formal coaching qualification to grow my business. I have a bachelor's in business, and in particular in leadership and management. I have many qualifications in coaching, training, and all sorts of things that aren't necessarily formal certificate level qualifications. And I also have a lot of experience. I had been a business consultant for over 4 years before I actually decided to start my own business. So I wanted to actually talk about this whole you need to have a qualification thing through a very specific lens of business strategy. And I'm going to be a little bit controversial here and say you do not need another qualification. You do not need a formal life coaching qualification in order to be able to help people set goals and go for them. You do not need a formal coaching qualification in order to help people with their business strategy. You don't need a lot of the qualifications that I see women holding themselves back from having a business because they're waiting to get that particular qualification. And I wanted to have this conversation because I want you to be 100% honest with yourself about why you feel the need to get that qualification. And in some cases, that need may actually mean that getting a qualification and going through a formalized program is a good thing for you. And in other cases, it might actually mean that it's not. And let's not forget that overall, I am a very big advocate for feminine business, and a lot of the whole certificating, qualifications, having these structures around businesses and business models is a very masculine model of business. So let's jump into reason number one, where I see people thinking that they need to get a qualification, and that is they feel really unconfident and they're really struggling to actually even sit in front of one client. They don't have a process that they know that they're going to use with their clients, and they're feeling really out of their depth. And so the idea of sitting in front of someone and saying, I would like to do a coaching session with you, completely sends them off, past beyond the comfort zone, beyond the learning zone, and way into terror zone. Now, in that instance, I think it is a good idea to get some form of support or qualification or structure behind you to help you feel like you can be comfortable in that space. But I want you to tap into that discomfort. Are you uncomfortable because you haven't done this before, or are you uncomfortable because you just have no idea how to do this? Are you uncomfortable because this is a new application of all of your skills and experience that you've previously used in a very structured way? Or are you uncomfortable because you don't actually know what you're doing? You have an idea about what it is that you want to do, but you don't actually know how to do it, and you've never done anything of this type in any context before. Number two, I see people feeling that they need another qualification because they're not an exact expert in the exact thing that they want to offer their business in. And that was exactly where I was. So I had experience as a business consultant. I'd worked in executive coaching and CEO coaching before. I'd also worked as a business strategist with small, medium, and ginormous organizations. But being a business coach or business mentor for women in the creative sector, I had never done that before. I'd never taken those skills and qualifications and that array of experience and actually used it in this particular context. And therefore, in that instance, if it's just changing the context through which you're expressing and using your skills, then I don't always think that a qualification is what you need. The next one that I see pop up for people is they feel like the certificate will do the selling for them. Well, I'm only one of 25 now qualified people in this level of the blah, blah, blah. And so therefore that is going to create business success for me. If I do this qualification, I will automatically have this business model that I can just roll out. I see this happen a lot for people who jump into, maybe they've done a life coaching qualification, now they're going to do a journal coaching and facilitating qualification, and then they want to do this qualification and that qualification. And they think that if they just amass enough certificates and enough qualifications, or that magic thing that someone, that magically sells itself, then that will magically create the business results for them. And unfortunately, in 99.9% of cases, that just is not true. Yes, you will have that qualification, and yes, you will have that certificate, but that certificate, unless it's meaningful to your ideal clients and they are actively Googling, I want to work with a 4th level priestess of the highest order of the such and such in the such and such, then to be honest with you, it has no impact on your business results. You may get referrals from the provider of that institution, that provider of that qualification. You may get some, you may get some initial clients because you're excited and sharing about your qualification and talking about all the things that it can do. But when all is said and done, you are still required to learn how to market yourself as a provider in that space. You still need to match what this qualification has taught you with meeting the needs of your exact niche and your target market and solving their immediate problems. And this is one of the big things I see with people who get life coaching qualifications, is that they're so in love with the modality that they think that talking about the modality will do the selling for them. Everybody needs a life coach. Everybody does. Everybody does. This is what I hear from them over and over again. And I say, but you need to niche. Yes, everybody could benefit from working with a life coach, but if your messaging is to everyone and you're trying to market to everyone, you're going to actually resonate with no one. People don't go around, unless they understand the world of life coaching and they're already preaching to the converted, they don't go around looking for a life coach actively. They don't even think a life coach is what they need at that point in time. And if they do think a life coach is what they need, and if they are actively Googling to find a life coach, guess what? You've now put yourself in competition with every other life coach who's relying on that person Googling for a life coach. Now, it's not just life coaching where I see this particular phenomenon happening, but it is a really good example of where you can sometimes put too much emphasis on what the qualification will give you and not enough emphasis on you actually growing your business. Now, you've probably heard me say this before. No great business was ever built on theory alone. And unfortunately, even though there is lots of practice that you get to do with active participants in coaching qualification, a lot of them you have to do 100 hours of coaching a peer and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, it's actually still theory-based from a business growth perspective because you did not need to sell your services to the people that you coach whilst you're going through the qualification. Now, I really am grateful that my coach way back then told me to hold out on getting my coaching qualification. And what she said to me was, grow the business first based on the skills, abilities, and qualifications that you already have. And then if you feel like it will add to the dimension of what you're providing to your clients, then go and get that qualification. Number one, it really helped me to stick with my natural skills and abilities and develop them further. Number two, it actually helped me to stop hiding behind a modality. So that was one of my desires, was to be able to say, I am a fully accredited ICF blah blah coach, thinking that that modality and that certificate would make a difference to the decision that potential clients were going to make. And number three, the message versus the modality in the sales process. I didn't have an opportunity to say I'm a qualified coach, so I had to focus on really getting my message clear. And so if that's something that's coming up for you, whether you've got the qualification already or not, or whether you're thinking about getting the qualification, I just want to put it out there and say, if you were to sell yourself as a service provider with the skills and abilities and experience and qualifications that you already have, who could you serve? How could you serve them? And what would your core message be? Because ultimately, qualification doesn't always change that. A qualification doesn't change your purpose. It doesn't change the way that you want to show up in the world. It doesn't change what you're here to do and who you're here to serve. And so I really want you to question and just ask these questions for yourself about whether the qualification is what you need or if it's something else. Is it actually confidence? Is it actually marketing skills that you need? Is it actually that you just need to get out there and start offering some services and seeing what happens as a result of that? Do you need to do some target market research interviews? Now, I mentioned I actually don't have a formal coaching qualification. I've been asked about my formal coaching qualifications in the sales process for my business, the grand total of 1 time. I've been in business for 5.5 years now, and one person asked if I had a qualification and if I had a coaching qualification in particular. And I explained to her that I didn't, but that I was an experienced executive and CEO coach, that I had my bachelor's degree in business and in leadership and management, and that I had done some coaching trainings, but I didn't have a formal coaching qualification. And she still purchased from me. And she was the only person who asked about it. So ultimately, have a think about it. I'm just talking, remember, from a business strategy perspective. I'm not taking away from the amazing techniques and methodologies and strategies that you learn when you actually do a coaching qualification. I'm not taking away from the power of coaching qualifications and what they teach you and all the practice that you get and the confidence that it builds. I think for a lot of people, getting a coaching qualification is a great idea. But I just wanted to do this blog post and this podcast episode to get you questioning and thinking about the why behind why you want to go out and get that qualification or that certification. a little side note here, and I wanted to talk a little, just girl on girl, a little bit of feminism and a little bit of like, this is what the school system taught us, right? So one of the biggest issues that I have with the education system and the way that it sets us up in terms of working out how the world works is that we are always answerable to an external party. So an external party, our teacher, teaches us the things that they want us to learn and the things that we need to know. Then we practice those things, we apply them, we learn them, we try to memorize them, we try to apply them into different situations. And we always, in a school setting, then present our work back to the same person who taught it to us. Is this right? And that person gives us that feedback and grade on whether that is actually correct and whether we've done the right thing. Now, one of the things that it does, particularly for women, is trains us that both the most important information we can learn comes from externally, and the feedback that we need for our work and the most important feedback for our work also comes from one single source, that authority figure who is external to ourselves. And so therefore, when we leave the schooling system and the education system, and particularly when we then go into business for ourselves, we don't even have a boss who's telling us what to do or checking over our work or praising us or holding us to account or reviewing our performance. That is even gone. We can look to other avenues to find that external source of validation and that external source of information, knowledge, and that like feedback loop as well. And so sometimes this can lead us to think that we need that as well in our businesses. And that can also be one of the reasons why we get so caught up in still continuously looking to seek qualifications, teachers, mentors, coaches, all of those, and particularly the environment where you actually do homework and submit it, or you do coaching sessions and have someone look over it and get that external feedback. It's all pushing you to that external focus. And one of the big, powerful things about being in business for ourselves is that not only do we seek from within for the information that we're looking for, but we also seek from within and need to learn to be our own inner mentor and to give ourselves feedback and to be clear with ourselves about how well we're doing or whether something can be improved, and to review ourselves. And everything comes from within, and there's this beautiful, beautiful dynamic that we create when we learn to look within. And so if you do have this kind of reluctance to look within, then maybe this little blog post was meant to plant the seed for you to just give it a go today. Instead of looking for external feedback on something, just understand whether you love it or not. I always talk about crowdsourcing. I don't understand people who crowdsource their logos and say, which logo do you like better? You're the one who's going to have to show it all of the time. You're the one who's going to have to be proud of it. Pick a logo that you love. You're allowed to love your work. You're allowed to say, you know what, I'm doing this because I love it. You know what, I understand that you don't like the colors that I've chosen and you don't think it matches my brand, but you know what? It's my brand and I need to love it moving forward. I understand you might not love this blog post, this podcast episode. You might not, but I felt really called to do it. And so I don't need to have that external validation from other people to say, yes, that's a good blog post or that's not a good blog post. To be honest with you, half of the time I don't pay a lot of attention to the negative feedback because I know it's more of a reflection of what that person is looking for, and I wasn't it at that particular point in time. And that's totally okay, but that doesn't mean I'm not what other people needed that wasn't what other people needed from me. So that's just an extra little aside to this particular podcast episode today, because I wanted to plant that seed that maybe it's time for you to look within. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. If you're looking for more information about how to grow the marketing side of your business, if some of those little reasons really resonated for you, then I would encourage you to come and join the Lady Posse Library, because in there I have some training on how to first start getting your business off the ground, how to get those first clients. I've got some training in there as well on structuring blog posts and podcasts. I've got some great resources to help you do the business side of what it is that you do best. And that may just be all of the resources that you need to have that confidence to move forward and start being of service today, rather than waiting for that qualification. So it's called the Lady Posse Library. And as I said at the start of today's show, all of the information plus the link to library can be found at tashcorbin.com/162. Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. Until next time, I've been Tash Corbin. You've been a fabulous listener, and you are enough. And I cannot wait to see you shine. Big love and bye for now.